by taking shortcuts in generating foods, for example, making meat from microbes, we can skip certain steps that actually use a lot of energy.
So, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. Our first spotlight of 2024 from valleydao. My name is Diana. I'm hosting today. I'm a community member. And for those that don't know, valleydao is a global and open community of researchers, students, investors, people in synthetic biology that are just interested about synthetic biology, even artists. And so we are a group of people that collectively fund and incubate academic and independent research projects. So these projects usually address environmental sustainability. And science spotlights are a really good way to essentially cultivate this community and grow this group of people that are interested in this topic. And it's an open space to learn, to have inspiring conversations, and to feature exciting research, as we are featuring today. So I'm very happy to host Dr. Jessie Zondervan, an earth scientist adopting synthetic biology approaches and developing potential solutions for mitigating climate change. So that's enough from me, and over to you. I will let you share your screen. Let me just... Yeah.
Fantastic.
Should be.
Yeah, I can see it now. Okay. Thanks, Diana, for that introduction. And yeah, let me just start by saying, well, first of all, ask if you can actually, it's taking a bit of time to go into full screen, but can you at least see my screen with the slides that are about to go full screen? Yes, okay. So I'll start by saying, yes, I am an earth scientist and not a synthetic biologist, but I will start by kind of giving you the overview of what or the relationship is really. Let me just see, why is this not? It's like technical problems. It's not. Seems as if my PowerPoint has crashed.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there we go. Finally. Okay. Apologies. Okay, now I can't see you guys anymore. Anyway, as long as you can see this, I'm good. Can you still see this?
Yeah, we can see great.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay, I can't see you, but you'll see me now. Okay, so there we go. How mind-blowing can you be when Earth systems meet symbiote to solve climate challenges? And so, for all the symbiote enthusiasts out there, synthetic biology is a very exciting field. I'm here to, I put this image here as an example of what Earth scientists do, and I think it's pretty awesome and inspiring too. Okay. It seems my computer is still struggling. Can't
That's okay.
To the next slide. Okay.
Maybe you could try like resharing. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, my PowerPoint is crashed. Okay.
Ah.
Oh, okay. Okay, it's back online. Back online. Okay, there we go.
Great.
Okay, so for this talk, we'll use this meme here, and we're gonna show you various stages of mind-blowingness. So I think this first image is pretty mind-blowing, but let's see. There we go. So Earth scientists don't just go into the field; they also use kind of all sorts of methods, including computational methods, analyzing satellites, going into the lab, doing physical as well as chemical and biological experiments. You see me there holding a pipette. And so that goes to say that Earth science really is a mixture between physics, or at the interface between physics, which is really interesting, chemistry, which is, wow, even more interesting, as a derivative of physics, and then biology. Okay, and so what you'll see in earth sciences is us using all these different sciences to explain how the earth works. And often you have physicists or biologists or chemists that come in with their expertise to help us understand the Earth. And these fields are called geophysics, geobiology, geochemistry, and sometimes at the interface of multiple of these subdisciplines, you get some really interesting fields such as biogeochemistry, which is basically the combination between biochemistry and geochemistry. So where does synthetic biology lie in this scheme? I would say it's a very interesting, very special place of engineering combined with in essence biogeochemistry. And throughout this talk, what I'll do is actually give you some of the context to understand what the transformative potential is of synthetic biology in the Earth system. And so this talk is more targeted towards enlarging the context in which you can work, the frameworks, the concepts, which you can then later fill with more content. And I'll give some content as well, some examples of technological applications. So that's really the idea here. So we'll start by looking at Earth as a system. And at the highest scale, really what it is you have solar radiation coming in, and you have that solar radiation has quite a low entropy. So, okay, I'm diving here into some physics. I think someone has their microphone on. So basically it's a low entropy energy that comes in, and the same amount of energy is radiated back by Earth through infrared radiation. So basically it's giving off heat, and that energy has low entropy. And really what this means is that energy that has high entropy can do work, right? It can move things, for example. And so it is useful energy. So basically, the Earth has 3 different methods of transforming that solar energy that's incoming into work. And so one example of those is a heat engine. So the Earth's atmosphere is heated by the sun. It loses quite a lot of energy through friction. So it is quite an inefficient way of kind of transforming energy into work. But basically what that does is it drives the atmospheric circulation and all the systems that are dependent on it. Then there's 2 other yellow boxes. One is photosynthesis, which is a special form of transmitting solar energy. And the reason it's special is because it doesn't need the generation of heat. So it directly captures the photons from the sun and transforms them into chemical energy. And so that's a more efficient way of transforming or putting energy to work. And then the third one, which is in the middle of the yellow box, called photovoltaics, is something that we as humanity have invented as a technology. And that technology also directly captures, just like photosynthesis, photons from the sun, but it has an added efficiency because it's not reliant on getting enough CO2 and water to drive its reaction. So basically, heat engines are very inefficient, and we'll see they have different hierarchies. These different engines. It's very inefficient. Photosynthesis is, in its essence, very efficient, but it is limited by the amount of CO2 and water that it can get. And then photovoltaics has an order of magnitude higher efficiency that actually can bring a lot of energy into the system. So let's look at what's going on inside that Earth system. Remember, there's energy in, work is being done, and it's the waste energy, so to say, that's not useful is coming out. Now, basically, the way that the Earth system works is that there's a certain amount of steps in which the energy is being transformed or converted. And each time it does that, it loses more energy. So at the top of the chain, you have the atmosphere, you have the heat from the solar energy that heats up the atmosphere, that sets in motion winds and the climate circulation. So basically, differences in temperature in the atmosphere, spatially between the continent and the sea, or between the top of the atmosphere and the bottom of the atmosphere, is what generates overturning, winds, clouds, etc. That drives the weather and the climate. So that's the next step here, motion, the next shell. That motion then helps the cycling of important resources such as water, the water cycle, right? So you have rain coming down onto the earth, it drains off into the sea, and in the sea, that water evaporates again, and you have this cycling of water. And the same goes for geochemical cycles. So rain washes off nutrients from the mountains. Those nutrients wash into the terrestrial environment as well as into the oceans, and gives the ability to do chemical work, so chemical reactions that, for example, life needs. Life needs nitrogen, life needs phosphor, and all of these resources need to be continuously recycled for it to sustain itself. So as you can see, if we only had, like most planets, a heat engine to drive all the work from the sun, then the amount of energy that's available all the way down the chain towards the cycling of elements, geochemical cycling, and then life would be quite small. But life has found another way to make use of the energy of the sun, which is photosynthesis, which we just explained. And so that gives it more the ability to do more work. And that is very interesting. That's basically what the whole biosphere is based on. Now, humans are part of life, but we also invented another way to obtain energy from the sun, which is even more effective, as I said. Now, the same thing goes on from the bottom of the center of the Earth, which has its own kind of source of energy, which is biogeogenic and the crystallization of the core. And so again, that drives circulation, drives plate tectonics, drives the cycling of materials to the Earth, the creation of mountains, the expulsion of nutrients there. And so what we see at the Earth's surface is this really interesting interaction between these cycles from the bottom as well as from the top of energy sources coming together. Now, really what I want you to take away from this slide, all in all, is that the Earth's surface and life itself are very central to Earth systems. Now, I talked about this hierarchy of energy cascading down into different systems, but it doesn't just go top down. It also goes from the bottom up. And one of the ways that, for example, life influences the cycling of materials on the Earth, as well as the climate, is through one of the examples can be taken from a rainforest, for example, the Amazonian rainforest. Now, rainfall supplies water to the land. It drains through the soil and into the groundwater. Now, usually that water would not be available anymore on the surface where life could use it. Now, plants have evolved the ability to actually dig down with their roots and access that water from down below, from the earth, from underground. And what plants do then is they actually pump that water through their, if it's a tree, they pump through the trunk, through the leaves, and that water escapes as gas. And the plants do that on purpose because they need to create that flow of gas to suck in CO2 into the leaves to drive the photosynthetic process. But in the process, they are creating this feedback loop of releasing water into the atmosphere, which is then available for rainfall to form. So in essence, what they're doing, what rainforests are doing, is they are actually creating their own microclimate, their own environment to optimize the amount of photosynthesis that they can do. So in essence, life is affecting the cycling of water and is also affecting the climate through, for example, absorbing CO2. And so, as you can see, it's not as simple as bottom down, but it also goes the other way. So life, in essence, has its ability to create its own kind of environment. Now, that is an example from the modern day, but actually what we start to see in geological studies, for example, and this is actually my own one, is that these sorts of this sort of meddling of life in the Earth system happens over geological timescales as well. So on the left, you have an image of carbon cycling from the mantle, being expelled through volcanoes, and then coming back in through the weathering of fresh rocks, mountains, and then going back down into the earth. That is kind of the textbook view of the kind of the 20th century. But what we understand now, we're starting to understand, is that actually life itself plays a big role. So these green arrows in the right diagram show the cycling of organically produced, so the carbon locked up by the biosphere that is both released in mountains as well as buried into the oceans and into rocks. So all of these sorts of ideas of life stabilizing the climate, of life creating its own microclimates and affecting a higher level systems, basically gave birth to the idea of the Gaia hypothesis of basically life itself is altering the properties and fluxes of important elements such as CO2, water, oxygen, to maintain the necessary conditions to thrive. And on the one hand, you have people that take it to the extreme that say, okay, Earth is conscious, and that's not as far as I would go. And really, if you start to look into thermodynamics, it's really about a system maintaining its optimal state. But in essence, what is important for you to take away here is that because we only have a finite amount of energy coming in from the sun, being put to work through heat engines and through photosynthesis, it has a limit. And the Earth system has found a way to optimize itself to do as much work as possible within that limit. And so that's where humans come in. And that's where part of the problem lies. Really, people, we take resources out of the Earth system, for example, water, or we use the land, we replace rainforests with agricultural fields to use the photosynthetic energy to create food. And by doing that, we actually deplete the Earth system's ability to create those positive feedback loops, for example, maintaining that microclimate that actually boosts the productivity of life in rainforests. And what we also know about systems is that they are not stable. They often fluctuate, and so there's some natural variability, and that is fine because if that ball is fluctuating in basin A here, then it will always try to find its way back to that optimal position. But systems also have what we know are tipping points. So once you go beyond that natural fluctuation, you risk kind of reaching a tipping point at which the system collapses into another state, which is not as optimal. And so that is really those are kind of the main ideas behind what we call planetary boundaries. And really what we see here on this diagram is a number of critical Earth systems, and we're showing with the colors how close are we to a possible tipping point. And it's very hard to predict those, but basically what they've done here is look at the natural variations of various systems, such as, for example, CO2 levels, or the amount of species, or the amount of land use. So the amount of land that people are using that's not available to the biosphere to create its positive feedbacks. And basically, if we are beyond a certain natural fluctuation, and we see other risks, so we see, for example, signals of small systems collapsing, then we say we are close to a risk or beyond the safe operating zone. So there's this idea of there's only so much that we can do as humans to alter the system, such as taking away space of the rainforest, taking more agricultural fields. At some point, your system will collapse. It will not be able to sustain its microclimate. And so even the agricultural fields that we derive from the Amazon will become less productive. That's figure A here on the left. But as we saw in one of the earlier diagrams, we have generated an ability to capture more energy from the sun. So we are not reliant on that cascade of the heat engine, so the atmospheric climate, or even life photosynthetic energy, which we've been using so far. For example, fossil fuels are basically locked up energy, chemical energy from photosynthesis. But now we have the ability to generate energy directly from the sun, capture that through photovoltaics. So we don't need to take energy from the Earth system. We don't need to take away, for example, photosynthetic energy by building out loads of agricultural fields. We can generate energy separately, and we can put that energy back into the Earth system. And we'll show some examples of that. But basically, that's what it means to be not just a circular society, have a circular economy, but have a regenerative one that can actually make Earth better than it was before. But really, this requires us to understand the importance of life in the Earth system, and there we go. And so if we only focus on, for example, taking out carbon dioxide, removing carbon dioxide, lowering temperatures through things such as solar geoengineering, which we can actually already do. This is the only kind of big intervention we have the technology for at the moment. Then we can actually go towards a path that might be able to keep temperature in check, but it's not a living planet. And the other pathway that we have is one that is maybe more bright, is one where we can generate more life. And that's really requires that systems perspective. So there's really three things that we can do that are related to synthetic biology. The first one is we can find a way to generate and recycle resources more efficiently to relieve the pressure on Earth stabilizing systems, right? So, for example, by taking shortcuts in generating foods, for example, making meat from microbes, we can skip certain steps that actually use a lot of energy. So, for example, cattle require a lot of land both to grow food for the cattle and then for the cattle to actually live and graze on. And there's actually a lot of waste in converting that energy step by step towards producing meat. And the promise of synthetic biology there is that we can actually take some of the genes from these meat-producing cows and create little factories, little cells that are producing that protein. So that's one way. Another way is we can do more efficient resource recycling, such as plastics degrading enzymes, or we can build new building materials for cities, again, using biological metabolism, which can be a lot more efficient than current ways of producing things. And I think that's where most synthetic biology is concentrated on now, and a lot of good examples exist. So I won't linger too long on that. I think the more exciting ones are, for example, here, humans have the opportunity to embed intelligence into the Earth system. So what does that really mean? So I introduced the idea of Gaia, right, of life, maintaining its kind of optimal conditions on Earth. But it's not necessarily a conscious thing. It's not necessarily a smart and intelligent thing. It just is a kind of the results of thermodynamic rules. But humans actually, we ourselves are intelligent forms of life, and we also found a way to scale life. So how do we do that? Well, we need the ability, as you see in this image, we need the ability to actually know what's going on. So we need these positive feedback loops. And one way is through satellite data. For example, a lot of land regeneration efforts require that they know actually how much carbon is being sequestered by rainforests that we're replanting. And you can do some of that with satellites. Really, there are a lot of things that we cannot monitor now, unmonitorable processes and chemicals that we can monitor with biology, and in particular biosensors. And so synthetic biology is really good actually at creating very specific ways of measuring, for example, pollutants or the presence of beneficial microbes. And the way this works is we generate kind of proteins and our RNAPs here. They're just types of molecules, biological molecules in essence, that can sense the presence of a pollutant, for example, then process that signal and then send out a different signal. For example, in this case, it is a sort of luminescence. And here you see a little device that reads that luminescence. And that is pretty cool. Where it becomes even more cool or mind-blowing is that actually it can affect biological systems the other way around, cells the other way around as well. So rather than the cells emitting a certain certain light when they sense something, you can also activate certain functions within cells using light, right? So you emit certain wavelengths of light and then affect the cells and process in themselves. So this way, basically, you are looping in computers and computational systems into those biological processes, making those feedback loops. And so when you actually couple that with data transmission technologies, we can actually measure and intervene using biological systems. We can actually link this to the satellite scale kind of data and intervention as well. Okay, so this is really far out there, and this is kind of the frontier, so to say, of where we are heading with this. But then those are the first 2 points, the first 2 themes in which synthetic biology really can help us transform the Earth into a more habitable planet. But the third one is the most exciting one. So I told you, we now have the ability to capture and put more energy and work into our Earth using photovoltaics. And that means we can make it more abundant and alive. We can expand the planetary boundaries that we're currently living with. So this is very tight to the idea of terraforming, for example. You see this arrow of terraforming Mars. And that idea is very applicable there. And a very straightforward example is, for example, current water cycling and kind of precipitation relies on really inefficient heat engines, right? So the solar radiation heating the atmosphere, turning the circulation. And basically what you have is you need to evaporate water from the oceans, which desalinates it, and then condensate it back onto the Earth's surface. That's actually physically very inefficient. And as humans, we have a more efficient way of producing water using desalination membranes, reverse osmosis. And of course, if we couple that then with our own source of energy, we can generate basically more water than current planetary limits allow. And it's a very simple one, a very kind of brute force one. But really what we require is an integration of technologies and leveraging positive feedbacks. And so that's something that I'm doing now with the Terra project, which I can tell more about if there's any questions about it. Basically, we have a number of different technologies, including, for example, microbial inoculation, where microbes can basically enhance symbiotic effects between plants and the soil that kind of supports more plants, for example. That's a very simple way of putting it. And you can use AI systems to kind of screen and understand which microbes are needed in which places. And there are actually startups doing this, or just this thing. And targeting positive feedback loops means, for example, soil holds a lot of water. So if your soil is healthy, when it rains, it retains the water at the surface, making it more available to plants, which then, as we saw in the jungle example, you create this local water cycle that actually improves the local climates. These kind of positive feedback loops are the ones that you can trigger. And really what that means is what you're trying to do here is remember that idea of a tipping point. You change the characteristics of that system so that you move the tipping point itself, right? So a small adjustment in the system, for example, a landscape, can actually flip it into a big transformation. That's the whole idea. That's linked to systems. And actually, there's quite a lot of mathematics that you can do to actually understand how that works. So actually, if we introduce the concept of synthetic biology, of engineering certain microbes to enhance the positive feedback effects that are available in degrading ecosystems that cannot sustain themselves due to increasing heat and drought, for example, then most likely what happens is nothing, because natural systems usually outcompete kind of synthetic strains, right? So really you need to think about this mathematically. A small change that you make to a system using DNA often doesn't lead to anything, but if you understand the system well enough, then the right change can make a transformative impact, can green a desert, for example. And that's what you see here with these different layers in this diagram. Is at the top layer you have in DNA, which we can now, using synthetic biology, we can alter at will, to then at the second stage alter the mechanisms of how cells operate within themselves, which then at the third level, level B here, you see the interaction between cells at the surface, between different types of microbes in the soil and with plants. And then at the third level, the bigger systems such as the water cycle that I was talking about. Of course, such interventions would require a mathematical model and kind of similar type of clinical trials, which you see here. There's, people are thinking about how this would look like and likening that to clinical research with different stages of testing, including, for example, these closed domes, where we actually can test out some of these novel ecosystems. And so what I want to leave you with is hopefully a bigger context for, what could the role of synthetic biology be in terraforming, in making the Earth more habitable, and these three themes that are identified here, being more efficient with the energy that we're receiving from the sun, and being less of a burden on Earth systems. Secondly, creating a more intelligent feedback loop between human systems and Earth systems using biosensors. And then thirdly, the idea of actually going a step further and saying the extra energy that we have now as humanity, we can use it to create a more optimal state for your system. And of course, that is the most radical idea that is out there. But people are working on this. So with that, I'm open for questions. I'm sure there might be a lot of questions or clarifications that you're seeking, or maybe even ideas. So I'll end it with that.
Wow, that was incredible. Thank you so much. And it was also really good to see like so many approaches covered as well. I think this gave a really good idea of, the landscape of what's going on in Earth systems and applying synthetic biology. Yeah, I think so. If anyone wants to ask questions, feel free to unmute yourself or to put it in the chat as well. I can read it out loud. In the meantime, I just wanted to ask, so what is the maintenance of these kind of feedback systems look like? So like if you have a biosensor,
Mhm.
I assume, I'm not sure if this is like a cell-based or if it's like a cell-free system biosensor, but are these biosensors like they have to be replenished, or I mean, do they last long?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. So these biosensors typically what they do is okay, so there's different types of biosensors. So one type of biosensor is a biosensor that is basically a whole cell, and that whole cell goes into your environment and senses something, sends out a signal, and it can do that, basically until it dies. So in that sense, it would have to be replenished unless it's a cell that can replicate itself. And often, for good reasons, we don't want to put cells in that can replicate themselves that are synthetically, generated. And the other one is a cell-free biosensor. So that's the example that I have here, where basically there is no cell here, but only important proteins, RNA pieces, etc., that will detect the element of interest. And of course, these you would need to replenish as well.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, in terms of like having like a higher scale of data collection, because it seems like
Mhm.
it seems like yeah, there's a lot of data that could be very useful, but do you think there's a way to have this at a high like a higher scale to have a greater amount of data being generated, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, that's basically a little bit speaking to this figure here. And the question is really, okay, how do we maintain those biosensors? Is this something that we're actively doing? And yeah, we could actively be putting these biosensors in all the time and then receiving the data from them. Another idea, which is more radical, is the one that's based on the idea of forming what we call hypercycles or motifs, where the synthetic streams that you're introducing can be self-sustaining and become part of the system and become self-replicating. And those, it is possible, but it's a challenging problem because you need to do a lot of mathematics, as you can see here. There's the DNA level, doing symbio, but then you actually need a lot of maths to understand what will happen to the populations and how will the synthetic strain compete with the natural strains. You don't want that. You want them to be mutualistic, right? So there's a lot of logic and mathematics there that you need to go through and that people are starting to do, but it's very nascent.
Yeah, I guess that's like the $1 million answer, right? How to scale up successfully. And yeah, I see Mark has a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, yes. Just wanted to
Right.
say really awesome presentation. Thought it was really cool. I've been thinking about like carbon capture things a lot recently. And I guess I was kind of I wanted to get your perspective on like, can we at some point move to a world where carbon dioxide could be seen as like a valuable resource instead of like an unwanted byproduct? I mean, there's like companies like LanzaTech use carbon dioxide and turn it into like textiles and things.
Yeah.
Do you think that would be one day possible? Like 100 years time, like 1,000 years? What would that look like to you? You know?
Yeah. So I would put that under the first theme, right? So
Mm,
basically being less of a burden on existing Earth systems. So that means both appropriating less energy from the existing Earth systems, appropriating less land, but it also means polluting less. And you can see
Mm,
basically CO2 in this sense being a pollutant. Too
mm,
much of it is not good for the atmosphere. It's not good for the climate system. It's not optimal, let's say. So uh, basically, that means, yeah, either producing less carbon dioxide or using more of it. So, for example, here, these carbon-based materials or these cyanobacteria-based materials produce bioconcrete. I think that's a very good example. So, actually, one of the biggest emissions from human activities is the creation of concrete. But basically, because we have lime, which actually was originally produced by life in oceans, but it is now in the form of limestone. And what we need to do is we need to burn that limestone or that lime to create the cement that we need for concrete. So this is a very highly emitting kind of activity.
mm.
Now, if we directly use microbes to produce the cement, to produce the concrete, for example, then not only don't we emit the CO2, we actually absorb CO2. So that is an example of using carbon as a resource, and yeah, in essence, carbon is a resource. Mm, it's just about being able to cycle it, and what the time frame on those things are. People are already doing these things, but the question is, when is it going to be scalable? When is it
Yeah.
an actual solution? And it's a hard question to answer, right? I don't know if I have the answer to that, but I'm quite optimistic. I don't see this as a 50-year timeline, but hopefully something that's more like in the timeline of 10, 20 years.
Cool. Is that, sorry, it just I'm really sort of superficially introduced the idea. Is the bioconcrete the same as I've
Mhm.
been seeing a lot recently about like carbon negative concrete? Is that,
Yeah,
do you know, is that the same? Is it a separate thing? Is it, because I thought it
yeah.
was carbon sequestration um into the actual concrete itself, but that's just because I hadn't
hmm
read up on it. Sorry if that's a really basic question.
No, yeah, that's. I think the yeah, those would be the same things as far as
Okay.
I understand your question. Yeah, yeah,
Cool, cool. Sorry. Um, Sorry, yeah, that's those are my questions for now.
excellent. Thanks.
In terms of, long-term thinking and the challenges that are to come, what do you think are the main bottlenecks? Do you think it's like policy? Do you think it's the knowledge that's limiting us, particularly in this field of, restoring Earth systems? Is it, yeah, policy? Is it culture? Is it financial, lack of funding? Yeah, what do you
Mhm.
think?
That's a very good question. Yeah. So when I said, okay, when I introduced the idea of terraforming, I gave two examples. One here that uses reverse osmosis, and another basically what I'm actually doing at the moment is combining a number of existing technologies, atmospheric water harvesting, algae production, microbial inoculation, and Internet of Things to basically improve that terraformation process. And just giving water is not enough. So actually, there's no synthetic biology in there, and the reason for that is synthetic biology, in essence, is what I see as the next phase of terraforming, and so it's a very nascent technology that needs a lot more development. So at the moment, I would say it is in the stage of especially when we're talking about theme one, we already see a lot happening. So it's definitely in the stage of being applied, and there it's really about scaling and finding the right way to scale these systems. And so a lot of that is really about fabrication, manufacturing, bioreactor kind of optimized bioreactor factories. But number two and three are actually rather nascent ideas that have some proven use cases in research settings, but to make them practical and economic is another problem. So on the one hand, it's maturing these technologies and you can do that partly in academic settings and partly in non-academic settings, to both make the technology robust and let's say more cost effective. But on the other hand, it solves the question of how much do you value it, right? How much do you value the use of these products? So cost is one question. The other one is demand, and so that is, to some extent, a question of policy, which can drive more demand. As, for example, what we're seeing with carbon credits, driving demand for land regeneration.
Yeah, you mentioned also a good point, like so in terms of academics' roles in this, I think lately there's been a lot of talk about that challenge of there's a lot more application research going on, and I think now like fundamental research on just fundamental knowledge and processes is kind of like not as popular. I don't know if you found this like in your research. Do you find that the literature is kind of like getting weaker in terms of supporting like these kinds of application-based ideas?
That's a good question. No, I think actually it's in a way it's getting stronger, especially because we are talking here about the area of synthetic biology, which is a very kind of rapidly growing field. So in my experience, literature looks pretty good. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I guess I've just been hearing other things. I don't know. Oh, I see there's a question in the chat. Thank you very much. You mentioned small positive feedback loop related to soil health. What other similar manageable feedback loops could we do?
Yeah, that is a good question. So what I showed here was a simple example of how to create a positive feedback loop to start up the local water cycle, right? And another cycle, for example, that's very important. This is the carbon cycle. And of course, at the global scale, carbon cycle is important because we have too much carbon dioxide in the air. But on the other side, at a local scale, the carbon cycle is important because what we see over the whole Earth is the degradation of soils, for example. And what that really means, the degradation of soils, is it means soils are losing both their ecosystem in terms of the microbes that run the soils. Soils are ecosystems, but also they lose a lot of carbon. A lot of organic carbon is being lost if it's being eroded or blown away. And so basically another positive feedback loop is basically if you improve the soil health, say you make a little change to the microbiome, making it more resilient, or adding a native species that was lost that really can contribute to its resilience. Then what you're doing is you're creating the ability for the soil to host more plants. Those plants generate more organic carbon using photosynthesis, and that carbon then feeds back into the soil, that makes the soil more fertile, and so you create more biomass, more photosynthesis, and so basically, if a landscape has been degraded, meaning its photosynthetic productivity has gone down, you can basically reinstate a positive feedback loop, and that brings it back to a more productive state. So that's another example. It's, on the one hand, it's the availability and cycling of water, and the other one is the, the cycling of and production of organic carbon.
There is another question here. In terms of embedding intelligence into Earth systems, which use case are we most close to with regards to technology readiness? Why? Also, on a personal level, which use case are you most excited about and why?
Okay. Yeah, so one of the ways in which we're already embedded intelligence into the Earth system is, of course, the use of satellites, both to record information from the Earth's surface, and sometimes using models to actually use data as a proxy to infer other processes. What I mean with a proxy is, take for example, in this image, you see some light here. So a satellite can detect pockets of human-generated light, and then we can use models to infer what is the population size in this particular area. That is a proxy. So the light is not telling us directly how many humans are living here, but it is a proxy for that we can use models for. So that's one way in which AI and satellites interface. But then, secondly, satellites can also be used as a connectivity with producing more productivity. So basically, sensors that are on the Earth can send data back to satellites that then can be read by computers. So that's something that's actually really interesting and happening right now. For example, SpaceX making space a lot more accessible actually means you have a lot more scope for those sorts of feedbacks. But then when we talk about kind of what we can collect on the ground, it's kind of, it's kind of limited if we want to do this at scale. So on the one hand, you have small submersible drones that go and scour the oceans. You already have thousands of those in the oceans today that are transmitting data to satellites. You also have the ability now that we are producing to create transmission zones within the ocean, so the drones don't have to go up. You create, in essence, an internet within oceans. That's really promising too. But basically, where synthetic biology falls in and biosensors fall in is being able to sense different types of things that just electrical sensors cannot do. But then we need to find a way to transmit that data back, right? So what I'm most excited about personally, that's a good question. The way that I see biosensors, the kind of the themes that we have today is we have pollutants, a lot of pharmaceutical pollutants, for example, that they would be very good at tracking, but also actually the presence of beneficial things that we need. So, for example, currently, because I'm kind of interested in terraforming and land regeneration, methods to monitor what's going on are mostly based on satellite data and maybe the ability to measure how much organic carbon is in the soil. But really, we don't understand what's going on in that soil, if it's getting, if the feedbacks within the soil are making the situation better or worse. And so that's where microbes or biosensors can really come into play and say, okay, well, which metabolic activities are taking place in the sphere? Are they beneficial or not? Are we seeing certain metabolic activities taking over more than others? And if that's a bad thing, then maybe we can correct that in real time, right? So that I think is most interesting, because then you can actually start to rather than just having a let's say the ability to measure forward-looking. How do they call it? Forward-looking. They use this terminology in finance a lot. Forward-looking answers the question. It's an interesting one.
Oh, sorry, my connection just went a bit strange. I'm back now. Right. Thank you so much. I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll close with one more ending question. So we also have a question asking, do you know any cool exotic sensing solutions? So in addition to eDNA, EEG, ECG for planets, etc.
Yes. So eDNA, I know what that is. Environmental
Just wanted to
DNA.
flag that also they corrected themselves to say for plants.
The other
yes.
two methods.
Right.
The other two methods I haven't heard of, or maybe what did you say? What were the other two? eDNA and
so there's like a few pretty cool startups. One in Switzerland, which is called Vivian. They're doing like EEG for plants. They attach like sensors, IoT devices to plants and sense electrical signals, and then try to see if the plant is in like in stress and so on.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if you know any other interesting solutions which could be used to measure nature.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, so so in terms of stresses, I know that plants also emit certain proteins or molecules when they are under stress, and so it measured well for the idea of synthetic biology is you can have different molecules, protein or a different chemical. And so, I'm not a plant scientist, but that would be an obvious one is, if you are interested in stresses, you can measure the proteins or the chemicals that's emitting to signal that. I think what's also very interesting is actually measuring what the interaction is of plants, or for example, how much carbon they are actually secreting into the soil. And maybe you can create biosensor for that. But yeah, really, in that sense, when we go into depths of different biosensor methods and the kind of the synthetic biology about in that, we're going beyond the depth of my comfort zone. But yeah, maybe other people in the community have some ideas either now or after they've watched the video on YouTube.
Well, I think one thing that's very exciting about this is just how interdisciplinary the field is becoming, and just how much more collaborative everyone is becoming. And I think so. On that note, we have to end, as we are nearing the end of the time of the spotlight. And I just wanted to ask you one question, just to leave us all thinking as well. What do you think? Because you said that terraforming is going towards a more synbio approach. That's like the next phase. So what do you think, as we are the synbio enthusiasts, what can we do to kind of push that boundary and get there? Yeah, what can we do, you think?
Okay, so you fell away your question. Can you repeat exactly what was the question?
Yeah, so my question is, what do you think we can do as just community members that are interested in synthetic biology and sustainability? What can we do to push that boundary further of bringing more synbio into these approaches? Is it writing? Is it communicating with people? Is it doing more research? Like what do you think would be the most impactful thing you could do right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what can you do with synthetic people that are either interested or in synthetic biology or doing synthetic biology? And I would say the real answer is collaborating with the right people. So if we're talking about embedding intelligence into the Earth system, then really synthetic biology needs to collaborate with people that also create electronic devices that can read the signals from the synthetic, the cells that they're emitting, for example, the translucence, and also people that do things like Internet of Things, people that do computation and read out what the signals actually mean. In terms of the third point, right, where we're actually being a little bit more radical, then some of it comes down to doing a lot of mathematics. So then it's about collaborating with mathematicians. I know, for example, the figure that I cited there was from you can't see it on this slide, but from some Spanish researchers in, I think it was Madrid. So it's, I guess, reading those papers, talking to the people that do this, but really being quite creative in that sense. So yeah, I'm happy to also send a list of interesting papers to read for those that are interested and want to dive in a little bit deeper.
No, that sounds great. Yeah, I think people would be interested, and we can also pass these on, or if people want to leave their emails in the chat as well, I can take a note of them and email you anything. Yeah, so thank you so much for giving this talk. It was very inspiring, and yeah, very different, new perspective towards synthetic biology from an earth scientist background, which is very nice to hear. And yeah, thank you so much. And thanks everyone.
Thanks very much. I'm just looking through the chat now. Some good suggestions here. Autobioacoustic monitoring. Yeah. And yeah, Tendena, thank you. Liquid phase separation is interesting. I'm gonna look that up. I love the exotic ideas. It's the whole what's so special about this valleydao community is being kind of radical about the science ideas, but also kind of how human systems work, right? Through blockchains. It's as far out of the far ahead of the curve as you can be in thinking about things.
Yeah, I was the one who posted the liquid phase separation. I would say in a nutshell, it's about like protein clumping. So you can have proteins that selectively clump based on certain conditions in the cell, and you could probably design it so that it'd be sensitive to carbon dioxide, and then you could probably design it so that the clumping drives a split enzyme. So if you design an enzyme that can in some way output a small electrical signal, then when the cell like maybe detects carbon dioxide and it clumps, it drives the two halves of the split enzyme together, lets out like an electrical signal. You might be able to like monitor that or something. And there's like, oh, get my cat off the keyboard. So you might be able to put that into like plants, and then just have them be like little monitors that you can just like attach a little electrical thing to. But yeah, I don't know. I was just looking for really exotic ideas.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, electrical signals would be very easy to transmit. So yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
feel
thanks.
like
Thanks so much, Jesse.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say, I feel like biosensors have kind of been overlooked in SynBio because they were kind of the start, like that classics project for SynBio. But now, yeah, I think like they're coming back, So, yeah.
Yeah, and I just skimmed on the surface of what it could really mean for environmental monitoring, but the abilities are really interesting. There's some good review papers, or one in particular that I'm thinking, yeah, which I'll include in the list.
Yeah, I took down the email. Oh, sorry, I keep calling you NSV. I don't know if that's your name, but yeah, so I took down your email and I can forward that to you if you want. Anything, yeah. Cool. So thanks so much for like giving the talk and for everyone else joining. And yeah, we'll do more. Keep on the lookout for more talks. Yeah.
Excellent. Yes. All right. Have a good night or morning or whatever everyone is. So yeah.
You too.
Thanks.
Thank you.